Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that very warm welcome, and thank you, Matthew, for the introduction. As I'm going through, I was thinking, well, I've got to scratch all this out of my speech because he was going through all of the things I was going to say to you. But you know what? I may as well repeat them because we do have an incredible record of success, and it is such a pleasure to be back at Canada Strong and Free Network Conference, surrounded by so many passionate Conservatives from across Canada and from around the world. I'm not sure how many times I've had the honor of being on this stage, but it seems like I've been here year after year. And it is an honor to be speaking alongside so many great leaders in our movement, people who have truly walked the talk when it comes to defending Conservative values in the public arena. Leaders, of course, like Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who is a relentless champion for freedom, affordability, and common sense Conservative values. I know lots of his MPs have been here as well, and former premiers Heather Stephenson, Blaine Higgs, Jason Kenney, Mike Harris, Gordon Campbell. Glad to see that you're here as well. I think you heard from MLA Rebecca Schultz from Alberta. Yeah. We're very sorry to have lost her from cabinet and that she's going to be retiring from government, but you know, as Environment and Protected Areas Minister, I think that she is almost single-handedly responsible for the fact that Stephen Guilbeault is no longer in cabinet, so I can see, yeah, my work's done here, she said, right? So she's going to go on and do some amazing things. But thank you again for all of the work all of those incredible leaders have done. What they have shown us through their actions, not their words, is very simple. Conservative ideas work. They deliver for families, they create opportunities for businesses, and they build stronger, more secure countries for all of us. And that's really what brings us here this week, because the question today isn't what we believe, it's how we can win. How we earn the opportunity to put our Conservative values into action so that we can make life better for everyday people in a world that is growing more uncertain and, of course, more volatile by the day. And let's just look at the results. What has a decade of woke, left-wing, anti-development policies done to our country? Soft on crime bail laws have let dangerous criminals and repeat offenders back onto our streets instead of keeping them behind bars where they belong. Their so-called failed safe supply experiment has only worsened the addiction crisis and exposed families and their kids to discarded needles and addicts shooting up in the parks. Their out-of-control immigration policies have overwhelmed our nation's housing supply, strained our social services, and created a national youth unemployment crisis. And their anti-resource, keep-it-in-the-ground eco-extremism has left us less able to provide a secure supply of energy to our friends and allies around the world with safe, secure, and responsibly produced energy products. So there's a reason why we refer to the last 10 years as Canada's lost decade. But where I come from, in Alberta, we do things a little bit differently. We've built a rock-solid economic foundation grounded in conservative principles, one that is helping us to weather global economic uncertainty and to help people succeed. And we're staying true to the ideas that have always made Alberta a beacon of hope and opportunity, even when the world feels a little bit dark and uncertain. Hard work, personal responsibility, freedom. These are the values we live by, and we stand by them, no matter what pressures we face. Guided by these values, we've made Alberta one of the most business-friendly environments in North America. Our UCP government, under my predecessor Jason Kenney, cut Alberta's corporate income tax rate from 12% to 8%, making our combined federal-provincial tax rate the lowest in Canada by about 30%. Yeah. As well as lower than that of 43 U.S. jurisdictions. Last year, we also cut personal income taxes, so the lowest rate is also 8% for every working Albertan so that they can take home more of their hard-earned money. We have drastically reduced red tape, scrapping over 220,000 bureaucratic regulations, saving Albertans and businesses about $3 billion in compliance costs. Scotiabank now projects Alberta will lead the country in economic growth from now until at least the end of 2027. And we've led the country, as you heard from Matthew, in housing starts for 2 straight years. Despite making up less than 12% of Canada's population in 2025, Alberta built nearly a quarter of all the new homes in the country. Since I took office, we've also doubled the size of our sovereign wealth fund. We call it the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund. It'll be about $35 billion by the end of this year, and we plan to grow it to $250 billion by 2050. And since October of 2022, when I first came in, Alberta has added almost 277,000 jobs. So Under Conservative leadership, Alberta's economy is booming. But our ideas do not stop there, because in Alberta we are also putting an end to the era of woke-ism. We passed, yep. We passed the Jordan-Peterson Law to create principles of neutrality that prohibit professional regulatory bodies from punishing individuals based on their personally held views or political beliefs. We recently introduced Bill 25, the act to remove politics and ideology from the classrooms, because classrooms should not be woke echo chambers. We think schools should be places of learning, where students are taught how to think, not what to think, and where diverse viewpoints are presented fairly and without bias. Yeah. We also passed legislation to ensure that children do not undergo medical, hormonal, or surgical interventions to change their gender, which could permanently limit their ability to have kids. It's why we will protect women and girls in sport, and it's why we'll ensure parents are always informed about the issues that are going on with their kids. And instead of letting charter challenges stall these laws in the courts, leaving children at risk, we did invoke the notwithstanding clause, because when we said we would use every legal tool to protect kids, we meant it. Yeah. On top of that, we introduced legislation to ensure sexually explicit graphic content is kept out of school libraries, so that, pornographic images are not getting into the hands of 7-year-old kids. I just can't believe the left pushed back so hard against us on that one. It's bananas. In Alberta, we also rejected the safe supply of taxpayer-funded drugs. Instead, we're prioritizing recovery and treatment to ensure the vulnerable get the support that they need. And while the courts have weakened the guardrails around MAID at an alarming rate, Conservatives know that when it comes to something as serious and irreversible as medical assistance in dying, there have to be clear safeguards, strict oversight, and real protection for vulnerable Albertans. And that's why Alberta introduced legislation to prohibit MAID for those under 18 and for those whose sole condition is a mental illness. You may have heard we will also not participate in the federal government's gun grab program. Yeah, we've instructed our police services and our Crown prosecutors that this is just not our law enforcement priority. We want them going after real bad guys. In fact, if anyone is trying to take away Albertans' guns who is not licensed as a seizure agent by Alberta's chief firearms officer, they could actually be arrested. So, yep. And in Alberta, we also passed the Provincial Priorities Act to ensure that funding from Ottawa is spent on our provincial priorities instead of on virtue signaling political programs and pet projects. So I think I got through all of them. There might be a few that I missed, but you can see this is the difference that Conservative leadership makes. And it's proof that when you get the fundamentals right and stay true to Conservative values, the results will follow. I may be a little bit biased, but I'm very proud of what myself and our colleagues in the legislative chamber are building in Alberta, because the truth is we're doing something right and people are noticing. We will stay focused on results, focused on opportunity, and focused on making life better for every single person who calls our beautiful province home, because this is how Conservatives win, by putting our principles into action and showing people that our ideas work to make people's lives better. And if we stay true to that and keep on delivering real results, we won't just win in Alberta, we will win across the country, because our politics don't just win elections, they build stronger provinces, a stronger country, and a better future for everyone. And together we can ensure that Canada remains forever strong and free. And with that, looking forward to questions.
please welcome to the stage Jasmine Lane and Premier Danielle Smith.
My goodness, I can't wait to read the comment sections after that speech. You did?
Oh, this is Chatham House rules, isn't it? Oops.
Premier Smith, of course, it's really nice to see you. It's good to do this in person one of these days. It's been too long. But you mentioned a number of things there that, you know, many people in this room at the very least would think that's common sense. It's our values. It's who we are. However, it's met with a lot of pushback. And so when I reference the comment sections, you know, how do we go about making these common sense things common again, as far as you see it?
Well, I can tell you one of the things that we've taken in our approach is that we do try to be very thoughtful when we know we have to tackle these issues. I think what happened is the left went so far off the rails that us bringing it back to the center is actually welcome by most of the people in our province. And so we don't try to overcorrect. We try to find out where people are at and say, where did they go too far? And let's try to bring it back to something that is sensible. And so I've always found that when you do something, we call it, we kind of are used to being the pointy end of the spear. And so when you go out first, the first reaction is the total freakout, right? That's what you expect the media and those who are on the left to do. And then the second reaction is some of the thoughtful commentators will say, wait a minute, I think there's a point here. And then by the time you get to the third reaction, that's where you have it settle out, knowing whether or not you hit the right spot. And part of the reason we keep going is we keep seeing that the people are behind us. And so there may be other things that we have to identify and we'll have to advocate for. But I would just encourage leaders in the Conservative movement in other provinces to do the same thing. And the calibration is a little bit different in each province. Conservatism, as we know, is a little bit different in Nova Scotia and Ontario than it is in Alberta. But I think every single premier, and we've got 7 of them now at the Conservatives, I think every single premier has now got a little bit more room to start moving on some of these policies, and I hope they do.
About a year ago or so today, you were feeling much more optimistic about the dealings with the new Liberal government. I saw that you had visited with Mark Carney while you've been in town here, so do you still have that same opinion, or where are you at these days?
Well, I was feeling less confident before I saw the Prime Minister. I'm feeling much more confident that we're going to be able to finally land the MOU, and to do so before we submit our proposal to the Major Projects Office for a new pipeline to the west coast of BC. A lot more confident.
On that note, it's been reported quite a bit lately that there's various executives and top CEOs and all of that who are saying that they're feeling a lot less confident themselves in it, given the current regulatory pressure that federally is applied to them. What do you make of that and those concerns?
Well, I can tell you I've been watching with interest is the energy sector, and even some folks in the commentariat world, like Martha Hall Finley. So she used to be on the Liberal side of the aisle, and she's now leading the School of Public Policy in Calgary. But we're seeing more voices saying that questioning whether the world is going to be moving in the direction of carbon pricing at all. And so what I would say is that in Alberta, we've had a carbon price since 2017. 2007. And part of it was to stimulate some of the research and innovation and technology that we now have deployed in Alberta. We've got carbon capture, utilization and storage at scale. We've got geothermal. We've developed a lithium market. We're investing in hydrogen projects, in bitumen advanced materials, and various other things, all because of the framework that we've set up. And so we just don't want that framework messed with. I think what we're worried about, and it's, I think, a legitimate worry, is that there is no other large energy producer that is going down the pathway of industrial carbon taxes. I get that. And of course, we're sitting right next to the United States, which has taken a complete 180 from where they were about a year and a half ago. So we have to calibrate right to make sure that we're creating the conditions for success. We're not imposing too much cost on industry, maintaining that really innovative environment so that we can start developing technological solutions and ensure that it doesn't end up downloading too much cost on our people, on our ratepayers. So that's what's taken a little bit of time for us to find the right spot, but we have to take a different approach. Pierre Poilievre did not get elected. If he had gotten elected, we might have had a different approach. We have a Liberal government where their carbon tax objectives are a much higher priority. And so if we're going to try to get to a deal, there's a compromise that we have to make. We just hope that we landed in the right spot.
I don't know if this is going to be a little too risky, but I'll ask it anyway, because part of the narrative, I suppose, behind the carbon pricing has to do with trade. And so the EU has a carbon pricing mechanism, and but the thing that's interesting about it, though, it's substantially lower, like it's 1.7, 1.4% or something like that. But the thing about it that's very different, I suppose, when you think about how much we trade with the United States, especially as it pertains to oil and gas, and what sense does it make to you, with the EU, who represents, depending on the year, maybe 4%, 4 to 7% of our trade annually, and for us to almost recalibrate our entire infrastructure system, energy model, economy to accommodate their carbon pricing mechanism so that we don't get hit with a 1-point-something tariff?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I just came back from Europe, and we've come to the conclusion that we may have to set up a trade office in Brussels so that we can do some lobbying there. We had gone to Bavaria, and I don't know how Germany, I know that there's a German representative in the room here, and we're sort of probing, how is Germany going to make this happen? They are the engine of the European economy, but they don't want coal, they don't want nuclear, they don't want natural gas, but they still want to be able to grow. Like, you just can't, there's something's not computing here. You can't grow your economy on wind, solar, and batteries. And so they haven't started having, I don't think, that very important conversation yet, the way we have in Canada. And so that's why, even though we may not be able to get everything that we want in this negotiation, it's a heck of a lot better than what we were facing under Justin Trudeau, who wanted us to go to a $170 carbon price by 2030, wanted an emissions cap, which would have shut in 2.5 million barrels of Alberta oil, and wanted a net zero power grid where if you didn't have your power grid 95% abated by 2035, the executives would go to jail. That was what we were experiencing under the former Prime Minister. And so the fact that we've got the net zero power regs gone, the emissions cap gone, an agreement to get to $130 pricing at some point that is more reasonable, and a few other areas that we've been able to negotiate, that's kind of the way cooperative federalism works. The Supreme Court has given the federal government the ability to set a floor price on carbon. And so we have to accept the reality of the framework that we're operating in, still fight against it, still make sure that our companies are able to afford it, and still make sure that our ratepayers are able to afford it. But that's just one of the realities we face. What I would say is that it doesn't mean that other energy producing countries are not doing some of the same things we are. They're just doing it a different way. Saudi Arabia and UAE, of course, do not have a carbon price, but they're both investing in carbon capture, utilization and storage, direct air capture. They're both bringing on alternative renewables onto their grid. And so we're seeing that some of the largest energy producers in the world have determined that it's important to keep on investing in this area. And so even though the U.S. has taken a different turn in the last 18 months, heaven forbid Gavin Newsom become a future president, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but you just know that if there's a change in White House, there's going to be a whipsaw effect of going in a different direction as well. So we have to be mindful of where the entire world is, and not just where we find ourselves in this point in time. We can't be uncompetitive relative to the United States, otherwise we won't attract any capital back. But I think we have some latitude to try to find a different balance.
So you just announced very recently a 500,000 barrel per day pipeline with the United States. What exactly does that say, I suppose? Because there's a lot of growing criticism of, Donald Trump is moving faster with Alberta's resources than our own federal government is. So do you think that criticism is fair?
Well, I can tell you it's part of the reason why we have a sense of urgency is remember where we were about a year and a half ago. I think that's important for us to go back in time. So just after President Trump got elected, I think he was making some indications pretty early that he was enthusiastic about tariffs and we all better get ready for it. And I think we began to see what that looked like in January. And that completely changed the conversation in the country. And so it doesn't matter whether it's an NDP, a Liberal, or a Conservative, everybody realized we've got to do more to trade with each other and find a way to get more of our products to more markets as just a way of ensuring that we have more options. And I think that is a really important conversation. For Alberta, a lot of our product is in a pipeline in the ground going to the United States. And so you can't effectively diversify that stream. You have to, and I want to put it into context, we have about $188 billion worth of trade that goes Alberta to the United States. The next closest trading partner we have is China, and it's about $10 billion. And then we've got others like Korea and Mexico that are kind of more in the $3 billion range, and our relationship with India is $600 million. So when we say we want to double our exports to other nations, you see how far we have to go before we even come close to having a large enough level of export capacity that would challenge what we're giving to the United States. The United States is our most important trading partner. They are our closest friend, and we have a little bit of a disruption in our relationship right now, but that doesn't mean that you don't keep trying to find the areas of common ground. So what we've been able to do is we've had so many incredible advocates in the United States that have been able to make the case for us. As I've said, what I've learned about President Trump is you don't go to him and say, oh, you better not do that because it'll hurt me. That is like the last thing that is going to win him over. You say, hey, why don't we work together because I'm going to help you. This is going to make America great. This is going to make sure that your energy prices are low for your people. This is going to help with your energy dominance. We are going to be able to assist you in being an AI leader. That has been our argument. So if you want to contrast that with the approach of other premiers and the federal government, you can see why Alberta enjoys a trade relationship that's 97% tariff-free, and why in the relationship that I've had with Doug Burgum and Chris Wright, and the fact that we've got our refiners and the American Petroleum Institute have been such incredible advocates for us, why energy is being prioritized in that relationship. So yes, presidential permits that will help Enbridge expand 400,000 barrels, presidential permits that will help South Bow make use of the old Keystone assets with an American partner Bridger that I think is about 450,000 barrels. And we better get moving because I think we got to get that one to the coast.
On that note, when you hear the Prime Minister and other cabinet ministers saying things, especially abroad, when they describe the relationship with the U.S., most recently as a weakness, let's say, what kind of an impact do you think that sort of commentary makes?
I don't know the full context of that quote, but what I would say is, and I don't know in this room if it's controversial, but I may as well mention the Davos speech because I hear about it wherever I go. But here's what I took away from the Davos speech. I actually thought that it put Canada in a pretty humbling position to acknowledge America is so big, so powerful, so able to produce and consume everything it makes that they can get away with breaking the rules. China's the same thing. So big, so powerful, they can also get away with breaking the rules. Mid-sized powers like Canada can't. So we should find other mid-sized powers so that we can all develop a trading relationship with each other as a way of insulating us against what China and what the United States might do. And we've been the victim of unfair trade policies from both the United States as well as from China. But that doesn't mean that we stop trading with either. It just means that if we want to develop additional export markets, we should work together. And I don't think that's a bad position for Canada to be in. I think acknowledging that we just don't have the same market power as the Americans do. We're not equals at that table. I think that's a very honest assessment. And is it a weakness? Maybe, but we can turn that into a strength by seeing if we can have other partners who can help trade. Because when you think about it, yes, America has, 400 million people. China, yes, has 1.5 billion people, and that means that there's 6 billion others of us that can trade with each other. That's actually a pretty big market if we start looking at the opportunities there. So I think that's a good framing for us to have. It doesn't diminish the importance of the United States. Proximity and our shared history, our shared efforts in keeping the world safe, our shared efforts on the military battlefield, that those are ties that bind and cannot be broken. But I think we also recognize that at this moment in time, we've got to think about different ways to do things just for our own protection of our own markets.
Dare I say in that as well, export capacity is a really big factor that perhaps, in my view, at the very least, doesn't seem to be getting discussed nearly as much as it should be. You've been speaking a lot lately. You're a busy lady, but you've been, in London, Sweden, Germany, and what are some of your biggest takeaways, the things you're learning about perhaps where Canada stands amongst some of those other nations, what it is that they want, what we can offer, where that's all going?
Well, it turns out there is a business case for exporting Canadian energy.
Say.
I can't. You'd be surprised. There actually is. But the question is, how do you get it to market? And so because I'm in Eastern Canada, let me frame it from that perspective first. So in Western Canada, our orientation is more north-south and more to Asian markets. It's just, again, when I say proximity, this is why when we talk about building a new pipeline, either to the south or to the west, it is because if we get to somewhere around Port of Prince Rupert, and a deep water port, we can get to Asian markets within 8 to 10 days, which is about 15 days less than the Americans when they have to go through the Gulf Coast and the Panama Canal. That is why getting to the West Coast is so important to us and gives us such a huge advantage. So when I'm talking to Asian partners or to European partners, and we start talking about what are the ways in which we can get energy to their markets, well, you can export through the Gulf Coast and sell directly to those European markets. In fact, Poland does buy Canadian gas from that exact route, and so we can develop mechanisms to do that. You'll see that my friend Tim Houston in Nova Scotia has opened up his natural gas market. I think there's 8 different companies that are going to be helping him looking at building out that drilling, which is amazing because that's a more direct shot, not only to help him with his own energy needs, but also to Europe. I think that also if we can convince our friends in Quebec that they should develop East Saguenay, which was almost permitted and ready to go, that would be another way that not only could they wean themselves off the reliance of American natural gas, maybe earn a revenue stream to wean themselves off their reliance on equalization as well, which I have an interest in. But then also be a central player to providing natural gas to European markets. And then of course there's the Churchill proposal, which I think coupled with icebreakers has the potential to have exports going up and over, not only serving our coast, but also going onto Europe as well. So there's lots of different projects, I think, that would allow us to get there. And so those are the constructive conversations that I have when I go abroad. I talk about Alberta's opportunity, what the pathways might be, but I also promote the ability of our eastern neighbors to be able to fill that demand as well. There are also some nations, and this is again maybe more of an Asian conversation, that if they're energy insecure, they're also food insecure. And so that is just a perfect partnership for us, so that if we can create a pathway of having 24/7 energy going to those markets and build those relationships, now we can also send over beef and pork, we can send over canola and other grain products, and that benefits all of our Western farmers as well. The issue of critical minerals and being supportive of each other so that China doesn't corner that market, that is a really important conversation that we're all having as well. We've got about $1 trillion worth of lithium in our brines in Alberta that we're now developing out, and that is also of great interest. But every single province and territory has a wonderful value proposition about critical minerals, and we have to develop the processing capacity. So those are the conversations that are taking place with Europe. I think they're very constructive, but I do think that it's the provinces in Central and East that are a bit better positioned to be able to do that, but we'll lend a helping hand. Anyone who wants to build some pipelines to help get our product to market, we're happy to work with them.
So I guess you could say that Prime Minister Mark Carney is correct when he says that we have what the world wants. The difference is that we just have to have the desire to give it to them. What exactly is there right now? It's been about over a year, and what is there so far that has been done that maybe doesn't get reported enough or that still needs to be done so that we can actually become all of the things that we've been told we could be?
So from my perspective, the fact that the Major Projects Office got set up is it's a good first step, because most of the projects on that list are the kind of things that are hard to build and have been hard to build historically, whether it's mines or whether it's LNG or whether it's some other product like that. And it's very interesting to me to see that even NDP provinces are putting forward mines for development. That wasn't the case a year and a half ago to any great extent. I mean, as much as the oil and gas industry has been demonized, the first industry that got demonized was the mining industry. The Fraser Institute, I think, has been doing a mining survey going back to when I was an intern there in the 90s, and they were talking about how terrible the mining investment climate had been growing in Canada. So I think that is one area that we've already seen a step change improvement in. I think the fact that we've seen Tim Houston take a very courageous step in ending the frack ban, which had been in place, I believe, in his province for 15 years. It's incredible. The fact that we've now got a Conservative Premier in Newfoundland and Labrador who is going to get Bay du Nord restarted, I think that's also an incredible step. For us, and I think for Albertans, they do want to see a commitment to getting a pipeline built to the BC West Coast, because that's going to be an indication for Albertans that Canada can work. We know that we can sell to the United States. It's a little more complicated when you end up with a Democrat in the White House, as we discovered when we thought we were going to be building a pipeline down there, and we ended up getting the permit pulled. But we know that we can build to the United States. We need to have confidence that we can build across the country, that we can work with our friends and neighbors in BC, and we can work with our friends and neighbors in Eastern Canada, and that Canada is all in this together. It's not we're all in this together except you, Alberta. We're all in this together except your oil and gas, Alberta. And that's sort of what we've been told for the last 10 years. So I think the MOU and a positive commitment to build a pipeline to the West Coast is going to be an important signal that things really have changed. And I think it will also unlock tens of billions of dollars in investment. I think it's going to be an important decision, because it'll demonstrate to a whole new group of recipients in Asia that we're here, and we want to do trade with them in a significant way. So we're going to put our submission in June. We hope to get a positive affirmation on that within months, not years. And then we'll see what we can do to get shovels in the ground as soon as possible.
Obviously, it's no secret that it's predominantly in Western nations, at the very least, and a lot of people who are a part of the same forums and ideologies, that energy has been so demonized for these various alternatives, which in and of themselves are not bad by any stretch. Most of them do also require the traditional forms of energy to run. But what is a piece of the equation here in terms of people who do vilify that a lot, and a piece of the puzzle that they're maybe not considering when it comes from the jobs created, the income, as well as just the economic impact as a whole? And I think arguably right now Canada's in a place where we seem more unreliable than peer nations as it comes to these sorts of projects getting approved. And so what is the positive that would come from us truly getting to work on this?
Well, I think we have to realize that there just isn't a replacement for fossil fuels on the scale that they're talking about. I think that the mindset of the eco-extremists for a lot of years was it's wind, solar, batteries. Alberta, that's what you've got to build out. I know that in other provinces, I mean, Ontario's 60% nuclear, and has really been, I think here in New Brunswick, have really been the only ones who've been able to make a breakthrough in bringing power of that nature onto the grid. Hydroelectric, that's great for Newfoundland and Labrador and for Quebec and for BC and Manitoba, but we don't have those resources, and so this is why the federal government cannot be trying to manage the electricity grid from Ottawa. This is why a constitution gives electricity to the provinces to manage, because you cannot superimpose some idea of how these grids should actually work. So that is the education process, is what is the replacement. Heat pumps may be great in areas that never go below -20. I can tell you that it gets below -20 in a lot of parts of the country, including one guy I was sitting next to who lives in Nunavut, and he said it got down to -62 in his area, and they had to cancel work for 5 days because people would go outside and freeze to death. So there's just certain types of power and fuel that do not work in our harsh, distant climate. And so I think having a reality check about all of that we have to be able to use fossil fuels as the only available alternative, or literally people die. I mean, I'm not wanting to overstate that, but we had a power grid failure, near failure, in January of 2024. It was -30 outside. It was 5 o'clock at night. There was no solar. After -30, you have to turn down the wind turbines, otherwise mechanical failure will happen. And we were facing a situation where if people didn't power down, we were going to have rotating blackouts of 20,000 people at a time, not able to make dinner for their kids or do homework with them, and not knowing when the lights were going to come back on. So that is the absolute reality of what we face in Alberta. And heat pumps and solar and wind and batteries aren't going to cut it. We have to use traditional fossil fuels. So that is the recalibration that we need to have. We're all for developing new technologies. Let's see if we can get some small modular reactors. Let's see if we can get some cost-effective large nuclear reactors. Let's see if we can develop geothermal technology so we've got better baseload power and heating. We're all for trying to find these new alternatives, but this is the reality conversation that we have to have, is that there are just certain conditions that we have in Alberta that are just not conducive to anything other than fossil fuels, and we have to embrace that. Find ways to reduce emissions and lower the impact on the environment, but let's be realistic about the impact and the need for us to continue to use this vital energy source.
Premier Danielle Smith, thank you very much.
We're done. All right. Thanks, Jasmine. Thank you. Thanks, Jasmine.